Hello everyone, my name is Ryan, and I and my teammates all run the YouTube channel Playing with Power, MTG. We were going to do a 50K subscriber special that was big and grandiose and had a bunch of cool stuff, but we decided to just talk to you guys and say thank you for 50,000 subscribers and just thank you to all of our fans. And we thought, what better way to do this than to just tell you who we are, how we got into Magic, and, you know, what we like to do and who we are as people. So let's get into it. So the story of Playing with Power is really just like any other play group that you have ever heard of that plays EDH. We started off as just a casual pod with 4 players that just played casual EDH with our friends. And we had a shortage at one time, and I invited a friend over. And this friend, he brought over a very, very competitive deck. It was Food Chain Tazri, I believe it was. And he proceeded to just stomp us, basically. He completely rolled us the whole night long. Turn 1, turn 2 wins. We didn't have the decks that could interact with something like that. This was back in 2018, and so, you know, CEDH really still had quite a stigma from that point. And so what we did was we asked him, you know, we don't really play that way. Could you bring maybe something a little bit more casual next time? Next time he came over, he brought Thrasios File Smasher and kind of proceeded to do the exact same thing to us again the next week. And we were like, hey man, could you cool it? You know, we don't really play that way. He ended up getting busy, and so he had to do his work stuff, and the rest of the group kind of felt the ripple effect from that. We had basically a situation where it was like, well, you know, when he comes back, we want to be able to have decks that can battle this guy's decks that are very, very powerful. And so the group at the time was Dawn, Dylan, Mike, and myself. Dawn built a much stronger Kess deck that was, you know, storm-based and had really powerful cards. Mike had an Atraxa deck that he turned into Tymna and Thrasios, and Dylan had an Una deck that was, you know, mill and, you know, powerful blue control. And I was the one who actually had the most opposition. Basically what I had a problem with was I didn't want to play competitive. I heard about competitive, I saw what that guy was bringing, and I didn't like it. I did not like what competitive was, and I didn't want to play it. I was the one who held out the longest from playing competitive, but everyone else was building competitive decks. So one day, basically, I was like, I'm going to show these guys, you know, finger wagging, I'm going to show these guys why this is not good, why this is not fun. You shouldn't be playing competitive. We need to be playing casual. All that stigma and stuff that surrounded competitive EDH. And I looked online because I'm a proactive player. I looked online for a very aggressive deck, you know, something that was in mono red because red is my favorite color. And so I looked to see if there was any CEDH decks that were in mono red. And sure enough, there was. His name was Godo Bandit Warlord, and with the Godo Helm combo, basically seeking to win as soon as possible. So I was like, this will be perfect. I'll show these guys exactly how this is going to be. We're going to just shuffle all night long, and it's going to be horrible, and they're going to learn a lesson. And it was just being very, very snide about the whole thing. And so I built the deck, brought it that night. I said, hey, I brought a competitive deck, guys. Let's play some competitive Magic like you wanted to. I won turn 3 the first time, the first game. The second game I won turn 1. And then the rest of the games that night, there was a lot more interaction because they figured out how the deck worked and stuff like that. And I was never more happy to be wrong about something in my whole life. We had the most fun we had ever had in that pod up until that point. I had the most fun I had ever had playing Magic up until that point. All the stigma that CEDH had from an online perspective and from a third-party perspective or an outside perspective was wrong. There was just all this stigma about it. And we had a blast. We had a fantastic time playing it. And we never looked back. That is what we played from that day forward. We started researching, we started going into more decks and looking into better strategies. We absolutely loved it. We loved it. We were hooked. We had a fantastic time. So we had been playing competitive for a while, and now basically I had an idea to possibly get into maybe something more in the lines of content creation. Because when we were researching CEDH and looking for CEDH content to get to better know this format, remember this was back in 2018, we found a number of things that are out there, but the information was a little on the sparse side. We definitely had content creators. I definitely can note that Team Turn 3 and the Lab Maniacs were the most predominant. And so I was consuming their content. And the Spike Feeders had just come out. And the Spike Feeders definitely went a long way to shed the idea that CEDH is a very serious format where it's very analytical and no one's having fun at the table. It's all very, cut and dry and, and intellectual, and no one's having a good time. And, they were doing very good work and continue to do good work to this day to shed that stigma of CEDH. But for the most part, what I had noticed from a content perspective was that it was very, either subdued, analytical, or maybe at most it was that, like I said, the Spike Feeders thing. And I wanted to do something different. So for context, one of the things I like to do outside of Magic is watch esports, more specifically fighting game esports. So this would be things like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter V, and all the things in those different circuits, the Capcom Cup and Combo Breaker and stuff like that. But my absolute favorite game to watch from fighting games and the esports levels was Killer Instinct. I absolutely love the epic nature, the over-the-top nature of what Killer Instinct was. And for those of you who don't know what Killer Instinct is, it's basically a fighting game where the whole system is basically built on these over-the-top combos where you're trying to execute these very elaborate combos against a player, and you can break combos and you can counter it and stuff like that. And if you beat the person, you had the ability to do this big, grandiose ultra combo at the end of it, which is basically this huge number of hits and stuff like that. And there was this very intense announcer, and there was a very intense music, and the characters were really over the top. And I absolutely loved this game. I loved watching this game at the highest levels because everything was moving so fast and there was such intricate detail to be able to execute these plays at this high of a level from an esports perspective, while still at the same time being able to portray this epicness of this game. And whenever I was playing CEDH, I had that feeling of grand, epic, huge plays, highest levels of plays, big stacks, and huge haymakers that tried to go for the win. And sometimes people would interrupt it, and sometimes you just get it. And it definitely reminded me of that type of feel. And all the content that was out there at the time didn't really convey what I was feeling whenever I was playing the game. And I was wondering if anybody else was having that feeling. And so I thought maybe this could be something that we could convey in that way. That big, epic, grand feel. Another thing that was up until that point was all of the content that was in the CEDH level was what I would call long form. You heard each of the players as they played their plays. They had their cutaways to their opening hands, and it was a very, very, like I said, an intellectual feel to it. The plays were very precise and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that any of that is bad. That's all fantastic. It's really good. It's just not how I was really enjoying it. But it was all long form. So these games would be, and therefore this content and videos would be anywhere from 60 minutes to 2 hours. And that was a really long time to devote to watching a piece of content. I mean, that's as long as a movie. And so you have to set aside some real time to be able to watch that kind of thing. And one of the things that I really liked was content that was easily consumable. At the time, as far as CEDH and EDH content, there really wasn't a whole lot of easily consumable content. So that long-form content you'd ever have to sit down and really devote some time to, especially if you didn't have a lot of time. You had to actually carve out time to watch this stuff. Or you would have it basically on in the background, kind of a passive observer kind of thing, where you're kind of listening to it, but you're also multitasking, doing other things. So it wasn't as focused as it could be. At the time there was, and there still is, of course, there is one type of content that I love to consume, and that was the channel MTG Mudsta. And what he does is he does cut and narrated gameplay. For a little bit of context, what I had found out from my conversations with Andrew over our time that we've known each other was that the reason that he did cut and narrated gameplay was that he lives in Canada in an area where they speak English and French interchangeably. So at any given point in time, and I'm paraphrasing here, so Andrew can correct me on any of this if I'm maybe not saying it exactly right, but at any given point in time, these people would be talking English and just switch to French, and the whole table would understand what's going on, but he couldn't use the audio because of that, because they were switching between French and English so frequently. So what he was kind of forced to do was do a cut and narrated gameplay style. But what the side effect of that was having this 2-hour game that could be compressed down into 20 minutes. And that's exactly what I wanted for the content. And it matched perfectly for what I wanted to do. So basically, my goal was to create CEDH gameplay content like the cut and narrated style of MTG Mudsta, but with the epicness that I hadn't really seen in a lot of other content. There wasn't that epic, grandiose, over-the-top, intense feeling like I wanted to see. And so that's where the idea came from. I asked the group one night, I said, hey, I brought a camera. Do you guys maybe want to record a game or two, and I'll edit it and throw it on YouTube, and we'll just see how it does? I mean, we didn't think it was going to be what it ended up becoming, but we thought, hey, maybe we'll get some views, maybe we'll get some subs, and who knows, maybe one day we'll make a little bit of pocket money out of this. You never know, maybe buy a card or two once a month. And that's what we did. And so when we recorded the games, we just recorded them as we would record them, as we would normally play, which is an interesting thing because we have been accused multiple times of choreographing our games, no joke. And the reason I find that to be so funny is that if you watch some of our earlier games from our first season, some of our misplays are so egregious that how in the world would you ever want to possibly choreograph some misplays that bad? So I just think that's a really funny thing. So we recorded a couple of games, and then I started to put them together, taking my inspiration from both Mudsta and, the feeling and tone of Killer Instinct with announcers and stuff like that, and big games and stuff and things along those lines. And I wanted to really convey this, hey, there's this big epic struggle and this big epic battle, and it builds up to this crescendo, and there's this huge, big combo at the end, because that's how most CEDH games win, because it's one of the most efficient ways to win the game, is through a big epic combo to kill the table all at once, especially in 4 players. So I took all that, and then I also made this big epic animation at the end of our first season's episodes, where it'd be this big, splashy thing with these animations and these cards going around and stuff flying through the air and stuff. And it was, I mean, when I look back on it, of course, it's a little on the campy side, but I absolutely loved every second of it. One of the things they always say is you need to make content that you love. And I loved, actually, when I put that content out, that I really enjoyed watching that game. And that's when I knew that even if this didn't do well, I was proud of the work that I did, and that we did, of course, as a team. And so we released our first episode on January 2nd, 2019. Within the first day, it was an absolute success. 10,000 views the first day. We were thinking dozens of views. It would be, cross your fingers. Hopefully we'll get to 100. That would be so great. And getting 10,000 views our first day was insane. We had no idea that it would have the reception that it had. It just completely floored us, quite frankly. And from that first episode, we knew we had something. And so we went forward with it. So after that, we had recorded 6 episodes, which we were going to say was going to be our first season. And we did our 6 episodes, and after that, a couple of things happened. Number one, if you watch the first season, you'll see that there's 4 players. There's Mike, Ryan, who's me, Dawn, and Dylan. That's in the majority of the games from season 1. Don was a person who always took a lot of pride in building his own decks. He didn't like to quote unquote net deck, if you will. He doesn't like that. He doesn't like just copying and pasting a deck online, building it and playing it. He loved his decks to be his own creation. He definitely got a lot of heat from that in the comments on YouTube. Why are you playing this over that, or suboptimal play, or why are you doing it this way? And he knew that continuing with the channel would kind of violate everything that he believed in his core to be how he played Magic. And so he took a step back. He actually said, this isn't really for me, this isn't really what I want to do when I play Magic, and so I'm going to take a step back. And we respected that 100%. We understood fully, hey, we get it, we don't want you to do anything that you're going to hate doing. And so he took a step back. The second member was Dylan. He and his wife had a baby, so it was awesome, and congratulations to him for that. But his life just really became too hectic to juggle a full-time job, be a first-time dad, and do the husband thing, and just everything with it. And then on top of it, to do what would be considered another part-time job as part of this channel, it ended up being too much, and so he decided to take a step back as well, and that was perfectly fine as well. But that also left us down 2 people, and it's a 4-player game, so we had to find somebody to fill these spots. So what we did was Mike and I went headhunting, if you will. We went to a Commander night at an LGS. It was a Commander tournament night where there was prize support or whatever. So we were like, hey, there might be people playing competitive there. Let's go see if there's anybody who might be interested in maybe being on the channel. So what we did was we went down there and we asked the store owner, hey, we are looking for some people to play competitive EDH. And remember, this was, still, first, second quarter 2019. So there was still a lot of stigma around CEDH where they're like, we don't play that here. You shouldn't be bringing that stuff here. Don't be doing that. Our player base doesn't like it when you bring super competitive stuff. So you shouldn't be playing that. And we were like, oh, okay, buddy, calm down. We have other decks too, but, we were just wondering if anybody was interested in that. And so the night was split into 2 pods, and, we played the first pod, and then the second pod, one of the people came around to us and said, hey, I know that you were kind of interested in playing a more competitive game. We have a couple of players that have some stronger decks. Would you like to play with them? And I said, that would be perfect. I would love to do that. And the person I played with in my pod was Garrett. And he brought a Muldrotha deck that its goal was to create a stasis lock. And I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I am looking for. Powerful, no holds barred, not going to shy away from cards that seem salty or bad, or you shouldn't be playing that. This is exactly what I was looking for. And I asked Garrett, I said, hey, Garrett, you seem like a really cool guy, and wanted to know if you wanted to possibly play on this channel that we have. It's still a young fledgling channel. It's called Playing with Power. And he said, yeah, that sounds like fun. We might do that. Mike was in another pod during that, and he came up to me afterwards and he said, and I told him, I said, hey, I found a guy, his name's Garrett. He might want to do this. So it'd be really cool. And he says, that's really interesting. I found a guy too in my first pod. His name is Folger, and he plays more competitive style. He had a Get Rog deck and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And turns out they knew each other. They were actually friends, and that's how it all started. And there was this arms race and stuff, and I'll let them talk about that a little bit in a second. But they were already friends who played competitively, so it was perfect. It actually worked out great. And the other thing that was really ironic about it was that Garrett and Folger were both talking about starting a podcast on CEDH. So for them to slide into this content creation thing was perfect. It worked out perfectly. And so that's how we got Garrett and Folger into it. We played a couple of games, and we could definitely, after a couple of videos were being released, we saw that we were still making some play mistakes, and Garrett and Folger said, hey, the guy who actually got us into CEDH was a level 1 judge at that store you were at. His name is Adam. And he, we can ask him if he would like to sit in on a couple of games to make sure that we're not making these play mistakes, that he could be our, our judge, if you will. And I said, well, if he would be interested in that, we would absolutely love that. We think that would be fantastic. So we brought Adam on, and he started to watch over our games, which was really helpful because we were making some bad mistakes. But and then he rolled into our team as well because he actually played CEDH. He played it really well, and he was a judge, and so he's really good about all that. And so it was just a really good fit to have him on the team as well. More recently, Adam has a roommate, and his name is Zach, and he came with us to a lot of the different things that we were going to. We had Patreon days, and we went to conventions and stuff like that. We went to Magic Fest Vegas, Garrett and I did, and then the whole team went to CEDH Con last year, 2019, and Zach came too. That's actually when we played with Sheldon Menery, was at CEDH Con. And Zach came, and he was just a massive help with everything. He helped out with logistical stuff, and he did all kinds of other things like that. And he was just really good, and he was a good player too. He's a blood pod player, and every CEDH table needs a blood pod player, that's for sure. And so he recently also just joined the team as well. He's been a perfect fit for the team as a whole, and we've just enjoyed every minute with him. So that's basically the story of how Playing with Power kind of came to be. So that's Playing with Power, the brand, and really what I want this video to be is for everyone to get to know Playing with Power, the people. A lot of times you just kind of see hands on the table and stuff like that. And if you look, through the recesses and corners of the internet, you might be able to snag a picture of us too. But for the most part, we're kind of on the anonymous side. You know our names as an abstract concept, but you don't really know who we are as a person. And what we want to do now is really start to change that. We really want you to get to know who we are, because we are very grateful for every fan that we have, and we know how lucky we are, and we do not take that for granted. So we really want to just, have you guys get to know who we are. So basically, we're just going to have everyone tell you who they are, how they got into CEDH, their favorite memory of CEDH, what they do outside of it. So as you already know, my name is Ryan. I am a proactive player. I love those aggressive, turn 1, turn 3, I'm the threat at the table decks. Godo Bandit Warlord, Keurig Son of Yawgmoth, those Selvala Bro Storm, all of those decks where you're like, you need to not progress your board state until you deal with this guy. And so that's what I really love to be. I love to be that threat at the table. My favorite colors are red and Rakdos, and so I love to revolve my decks around those types of things. My favorite CEDH memory is actually a little hard, and I'm gonna cheat a smidge here, but I would say that it was probably our 2 Patreon get-togethers. We started to, before the world became what it was, we used to have get-togethers with Patreon events. Well, we had one, and we had it at Adam's house, and it was just a full day, tons of people. We had a little mini tournament. We had a great time doing, and then the whole place was packed full of people, and we were like, this is really something, this is great. But I would say the one that ekes it out, the one that barely slips it, is when it was Garrett and Folger's 21st birthday. So they had their 21st birthday within a month of each other. And I said, hey guys, it's your birthday. Let's celebrate the way that everybody celebrates a 21st birthday. And let's go and get some drinks and stuff like that. Well, our local game store is in a strip mall right next to a bar. And so I was like, why don't we go to our local game store and play Magic all night, have a good time, and we'll buy you drinks, and stuff like that. We'll slip over to the bar and buy you a drink and stuff. And we would do that all night. And so we said, well, we're going to be going to our game store. If, any patrons or anybody like that wants to join us, that would be cool too. We filled every seat in the house. There wasn't a spare seat left in the entire store. We filled it with everybody, and everyone was there playing CEDH and just playing EDH and having a fantastic time. And we bought a cake for them, and we kept exiting and going and buying them a drink, and they were getting a little on the hammered side, but because it was their 21st birthday. But it was so much fun to do that, and that was probably my favorite CEDH memory. As far as hobbies go outside of Magic, other than obviously the channel, which, is also cheating a little bit, I am into motorsports, so I like to do, automobile racing. So if it has four wheels, I like to race it. So I do autocross, rallycross, track, drag racing, all that kind of stuff. I have 3 different race cars that I use, a 78 Corvette, a 2019 Mustang, and a 91 Mazda Miata. So, and that's what I do, and that's me. So let's also hear from the rest of the team so you know who they are.
Hey everybody, Adam here from Playing with Power, and I am the only certified judge on the PWP team. My favorite style of CEDH would definitely happen to be jank. Rogue stuff, tier 1.5, tier 2 kind of things. So think Brelin Shabraz or Aminatu or odd farm variants. I got into CEDH probably in 2015 when I happened across this PDF of like the 16 or 18 best decks at the time, and it had combos and cards that I had never even thought of before. Things like Food Chain Prosh and Brago stacks and Shroom combos. And among them was a deck, was Edric, that said that it played Flying Men and then chained Time Walk effects together. And I thought, there's no way that this is good. So I playtested it, and it was very good. And that led me down the path to where I am now. My favorite memory of a CEDH game, so PWP was in SCG Con in late 2019, and we got to play a game with Sheldon, which unfortunately was not recorded. And I was on Consultation Cass, and we were very late in the game, and I was very behind compared to the other players, and I had cast a Yawgmoth's Will. So, of course, everybody else, wanting that not to resolve, borrowed my graveyard and determined that I could win with a combination of cards from my graveyard, and there was a huge counter war on after that, and the Yawgmoth's Will ended up resolving. Sheldon actually took a picture of the stack and put it onto an article of his onto Star City Games. My intention of that Yawgmoth's Will was just to cast 2 or 3 mana rocks and set up for the next turn, but everybody else at the table gave me the win and told me that I could win, so I just took that. When I'm not doing MTG stuff, I like to play volleyball, though that's not happening too much because of COVID. I do some music stuff, and I love going to the gym, and it's pretty early here, as you can tell, so I'm about to go to the gym now. I'll talk to you guys later.
Hey everyone, my name is Soldier from Playing with Power. Just wanted to say thank you guys so much for all the support you guys have shown to us on our way to 50k subscribers. My favorite CEDH playstyle is Control. I like it because it leads to the most complicated board states, and it has the highest skill cap. I got into CEDH because I can't stand losing to Garrett. We have a rivalry between each other, so we just kept tuning our decks, and we eventually ended up at a CEDH power level. My favorite memory of CEDH is losing every single win con I had out of my deck, except for Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. That's a Lab Maniac effect, for those of you who don't know. So I had to Thrasios activate and manually dig through my entire library until I was able to play Jace, uptick him, and win the game. Some other things I do outside of Magic is play World of Warcraft, and I go to college.
I am Garrett Stacy. I am a player for Playing with Power. I do all the social media stuff for the channel. So if you see me on Twitter or anything, that's normally me coming up with questions for every other day or so. I'm not hugely consistent with it. Your favorite CEDH play style? I prefer proactive decks. Nagila, Golos, more faster decks that like to be winning the game or moving forward towards a win. How did I get into CEDH? I actually found it through our judge of the channel, Adam, which I'm sure you'll see later in this video. He showed me and Folger what CEDH was using Cast Storm and stuff like that. Like, we were just playing casual one night. I was playing a Mizzix Turns deck. I think Folger was playing a mild Get Rog list with a few combos and stuff, not the full like Double Titan Ad Naz stuff, like the crazy stuff they do now. This was about 2 years ago from about now, so like 2018 I would say. And he just like wrecked us game after game with like fast mana, everything. We were mind blown. We were like, we can't believe that people out there want to do more in the game, play the most powerful cards, and just like have no boundaries when it comes to CEDH. It's amazing. So me and him dove into it really hard. We played on CEDH so much in CEDH. But yeah, that's how we got into CEDH. Favorite memory of a CEDH game is probably the Ashiok video that we released on April Fool's, I think in 2019, maybe 2020. But it's just where we like everybody misplayed into my Ashiok when she was a brand new card. They just didn't know how to interact with her or like what she really did yet. So it's just it was just so funny to watch us misplay so many times into her, and like nobody could get it right. We just kept messing up. What am I doing outside of Magic? What do I do in my free time? I play World of Warcraft, League of Legends, and a ton of tabletop games. Warhammer Fantasy, Warhammer 40k, just to name a few. Something to say personally is thank you. You guys got us to 50,000 subscribers. We are nothing without our fans, and you guys make us want to do better and be better at players at the game. And we cannot thank you enough for everything you do for us. Thank you so much. Well, thanks, guys.
What's all, dudes? This is Zach, the Playing with Power member with the single most cranial accessories. My favorite playstyle for CEDH has to be stacks. By far and away, Blood Pot is my favorite deck. I love adding new rules to the game to mess with other people's strategies. I love the idea of just beating people down with creatures in CEDH. It's so much fun. The way that I was introduced to CEDH was actually through Folger and Garrett. And those two were introduced through Adam, who is now my roommate. So all of us just being friends and hanging out with one another, just inevitably I was going to get into it as well. And that's the story on that. My favorite memory of a CEDH game, there's quite a few, but the one that stands out the most to me has to be a game I was playing, Blood Pod, of course. I forget the entire pod. I just remember that in classic Zach fashion, I mulliganed into oblivion. I think I kept a hand with like Land, Crypt, Sylvan Library, and Tendershoot Dryad. Throughout the game, it was just a lot of back and forth for everyone else. A lot of, I think a couple people tried to go off, and everyone spent their interaction on each other, and they figured about little old me mulligan into 4, and I eventually resolved Tendershoot Dryad, and hey, it turns out 3/3s are really big in CEDH. When I'm not doing Magic things, you can usually find me playing video games. My number one game to play, I've been playing for 15 years, is RuneScape, old school RuneScape. Get that RS3 trash out of here. I also really enjoy playing chess. I've been playing chess a lot lately. I play bass guitar as well. Yeah, and that's pretty much me.
Hi there. My name is Mike. I am the alterer/graphic designer for Playing with Power. My favorite CEDH playstyle is adaptive. I like to sometimes play the aggressive role, sometimes play the controlling role based on the matchup, and I really like decks that have a really good late game. I also really like green, so I tend to play Thrasicos mid-range decks mostly. How I got into CEDH, I basically started with an arms race between myself and Ryan and our play group. Dylan and Don, they were originally part of the group. We just kept powering up our decks. Once we learned about CEDH, it just, it changed a lot for us, and we really enjoyed it, so that's how I got into it. And my first deck was Tymna Thrasios Paradox Scepter, which is still a deck that I love. And it was hard to go from Thrasios to anything else. It still is. My favorite memory, I don't have a specific memory of a game, but my favorite CEDH memory would be just grinding games all weekend at SCG Con last year. We we played literally all day. It was amazing. I had Lord Windgrace, had Flash Hawk together, and even after we left the venue, we got back to our Airbnb. We all sat on the floor and just played CEDH because we were having so much fun. And that would be my favorite memory of CEDH memory. What I'm doing when I'm not playing CEDH, I'm married. I've been with my wife since 2009. I have 3 puppies, 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And I also have a newborn baby. You know, I like to paint, I like to play guitar, I game a lot, mostly shooters, Apex, Halo, stuff like that. And yeah, that's me.
Okay, well, that about wraps it up here. Just really thank you again for everything. We are so thankful for every fan we have. And then that's going to be about it from this side. So here's to 100,000 subscribers. And thanks again. We'll see you all soon.